Welcome to D&D Out Loud with Ben Riggs. Episode 74, Why Borg? A conversation with Zac Goins and Erica Lowe.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to D&D Out Loud with Ben Riggs. I am Ben Riggs, apparently controversial D&D historian and author of Slaying the Dragon, A Secret History of Dungeons & Dragons. And over the past 13 years of writing and podcasting, I have met hundreds of creative geniuses in and around the world of tabletop role-playing games. And here on this show, I ask two of these flaming torches of human imagination to come on and have a fascinating discussion, which I then record and send out into the world. We're joined by Zac Goins, role-playing game designer, Kickstarter consultant, and all-around tabletop creative. Zac has worked with Marvel, Wizards of the Coast, Modiphius, and more. He currently serves as director of marketing for Limithron. He's designed for Old School Essentials, Mörk Borg, Shadowdark, and more. Welcome, Zac.
Thank you. That was very nice.
Thank you. I try. And did I pronounce your name correctly?
You got it.
Huzzah. Also today, we are joined by Erica Lowe, owner of Broken Brain Games and lead designer on RagnaBorg, which is kickstarting right now. Chambers of Agony, as well as third-party content for Shadowdark and Dungeon Crawl Classics. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you for having me.
So let me begin with a question that I was so happy that I got to write. It's simple. Why Borg?
So for RagnaBorg, we felt like it made sense, right? We wanted it to be set while the world was dying. And so it works perfectly, right? With Mörk Borg, the world's always dying. Ragnarok, world's dying. It goes perfect together.
Yeah, it's a really simple system, right? That's the other value to it. It's really simple and really popular right now. It's a lot of people playing it, which is another reason to make a game for it. But I think you're 100% right. Like every Borg, let me rephrase that. Most every Borg, all the big ones, I should say, kind of have an apocalyptic event they're swirling around. If in Cyborg, there's a reset or a turn off of the universe, and in Vast Grim, there's the parasitic grim plague that's infecting the universe. Everything's got a apocalypse. And so if you're writing a game that also centers around apocalypse, I think Borg should be your first consideration, even if you end up going somewhere else.
Well, and Erica, I'm not going to bury the lead here. I'm going to say, why don't you tell us about your Kickstarter? And then I have questions here, but hopefully conversation just blooms between you and Zac, and we all get to listen to it. So again, don't be afraid to just talk to each other, but let's, again, not wait till the end. Tell us about RagnaBorg.
So RagnaBorg is compatible with Mörk Borg and Pirate Borg. So you sail around Broken Midgard during the days of Ragnarok. So it's adds some things to naval combat. So there's like runes, binding runes that is added, but it functions. If you're familiar with Pirate Borg, you know how to run naval combat in Pirate Borg, then you know how to run it in RagnaBorg. And I wanted there to be like an easy transition. Most people who play Borg play other Borgs. So I didn't really want to make up a whole new rule set of how ships work when Pirate Borgs is already there. People are familiar with it, and it's really good. I have 8 classes in my book. I've got over 50 tables, over 75 monsters. I have giant monsters called Legends of Midgard. There's 6 of them, but we've unlocked 3 more. Zac actually made one of the Legends of Midgard. So they're created by people who have helped me over the last 2 years. So people who are legends to me also made monsters for my book. 9 new ships, but I think we unlocked 3 more, so that puts us at 12. And there's 4 adventures that you can get access to if you want to. as well to support it. One's a solo, one's trifold. One takes you to the time before Ragnarok. You get to play during the solstice traditions and adventure set around the solstice traditions of the Norse people. The other one is a Gauntlet of the Gods, because I'm a big Dungeon Crawl Classic fan. And so I've always loved funnels, and I was like, you know what? Let's make a funnel.
Well, and I should ask, I suppose, a question for the audience. If someone is familiar with the Borg family of games, where did this come from? What makes a board game, etc.?
You want to take that, Erica? Or you want me to?
You go for it. I just get done talking a lot.
Yeah, I think, Ben, you've chatted with Luke a little bit on this show before, if I remember right. But I was looking back through your episode. I don't see a lot of Borg creators on there, so that's exciting. Borg came out from Johan Nohr and Pelle Nielsen. They're a couple of Swedish creators who, I mean, if you were to hear them say it, like, it started as an art book, and that was really all that it was intended to be. Like, up until right before it went to Kickstarter, it didn't even have a setting. Like, there was a discussion, like an afterthought. Like, I think they said like a month before, but maybe I misheard. But like, they kind of said, oh, well, there's not really a setting here. Do we really need one? This is really more about the art and about the vibes. You know what? We should throw one in, right? It's really meant to be this art book, this coffee table presentation, and I think the layout and the presentation speaks to that. It isn't a book that's easy to digest. It doesn't have a table of contents. You know, that's probably one of the big complaints of it, is like it's you know, there's a different layout. There's like 120 different fonts. There's a different layout every spread. There's 120 different fonts. There's fonts that aren't easy to read, and that's the point to some extent. It's style over function always. And it works because Johan is a brilliant designer, and Pelle found the ways of weaving writing throughout that was still inspiring, even if you weren't able to, on your first pass, be able to deduce exactly what was going on. I think that at its heart, it's just a D20 game, and it's a really simple D20 game with low modifiers, low hit points, and with a ton of player-facing roles. You know, most GMs basically only roll on tables. Players roll for defense. They roll for the monster's damage typically. So it's really one of the most stripped down D20 games you can experience. I think that makes it appealing because it's really easy to dive into, especially a handful of the Borgs are really easy to bring people who are only used to playing D&D, and they can have an experience that's very different, that's very deadly, that's very intense, but still feels familiar to them. And that the general response is, I feel like I played something completely different, but I never felt lost. Like that sort of a vibe. Which I think is great. I think it took the creator community by storm because it was inspiring to look at and inspiring to read, and then it had a great third-party license that certain creators jumped on early on. Luke Stratton with Pirate Borg being one of them, and Brian Cullen with Fast Grim being another, and really embraced it and had a high level of success. And having high levels of success and things that look good are inspiring for others. And I think last time I counted, there's a couple websites where you can do it, but like there was like 1,000+ Mörk Borg specific third-party releases, and there were like I think it was over 300 Pirate Borg releases. So it's definitely in the like 4 or 5 years that it's been out, kind of that side of it has kept getting an injection of new ideas, new creatives, new art, and that's really helped it push forward, even though Stockholm Cartel, Johan, Pelle haven't put out a ton of stuff since the original release. They've really handed it off to the community and said, now you guys carry the torch.
Wow. Well, there's a lot to follow up from there. I could talk about how as my wife was giving birth, I was backing a Mörk Borg Kickstarter. But I won't. Instead, I'm going to say, so, you know, Erica, you asked to talk to Zac on the show today.
Yeah.
Why'd you want to talk to Zac?
Because I know Zac, and I just like talking with him, and I feel like he's very wise. And I feel like he has a lot of good insight. And so when you said pick somebody, I was like, well, Zac was the first person that popped in my head.
I'll back away slowly from all that. Yeah, that's nice of you to say. I was excited for you to invite me on. This is a fun show, and I'm lucky to get to weasel my way in kind of through a side channel. But no, that's great. I'm excited to chat with you. I've got some questions for you, Erica, kind of that I've jotted down, and if they come up, that's great. But I'm excited to have a discussion and see what your brain thinks about some of this stuff too.
I did not bring questions for anyone. I feel underprepared completely.
Again, it's a conversation, not an interview. You know,
Yeah.
I actually, again, I try and hang back after a while and see what happens. But
just to add on to like what Zac was talking about with the Borg, and this has just been my experience. I could be totally off base, but the first game I ever ran at a con was Mörk Borg, right? The next day I ran Pirate Borg, and that was in like 2022, I think, if I remember right. It was at War Machine Weekend, and I don't know what it is about Borg games at cons, but I've played, and I can't even tell you how many different games at cons, but it seems like Borg tables are just, there's something more energy. The players have more of a hype to them. They're rowdier. I don't know if it's because that like heavy metal like influence of Mörk Borg, and it speaks to like a certain type of person, and what it is, but I just find that the Borg tables are always just have a little bit more fun with it, and they like lean into the game.
They're not like, I mean, I adore a ton of different games, but I think that Borg is this weird relation of it's super dour and grim, but it's not pretentious or full of itself. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously. None of the settings, there's always an injection of fun or humor or, you know, something clever in the settings to where you realize this is a safe space to be, you know, a little bit goofy if you want to, or be ignorant if you need to be, or like that sort of thing. Whereas sometimes you walk into a different game, like I think, Call of Cthulhu is one of my favorite games, and I love playing it, and I love playing it at shows. But definitely when you sit down on that, it's also dark, but it's also serious. And so when you're sitting down with strangers and a GM that you've never played with before, you kind of, there's this like awkward, like not posturing, but almost posturing about like, how serious am I supposed to be here? And then hopefully you can find the right medium. But with a Borg, it's like from the gate across everything, and the GMs by and large that I've ran into on the Borg space are like, we get it, it's fun, it might have its dark moments, but let's just go nuts. And that's a really great thing for conventions when you're sitting down with strangers, to feel that there's no pressure to overperform or to, you know, behave in a very specific way. Then you said that you backed Borg as you're in the hospital there, but like, what's been your experience with Borgs since then?
Almost exclusively as a literary experience. So I backed I want to say it was the Icon Kickstarter, IKHON, as my wife was giving, I mean, not literally, because, you know, literally I was holding her foot as she was giving birth, but you know, in the long run up to the to the grand entrance of my son, you know, she was very angrily waiting for a epidural. She was not a lot of fun to talk to at the moment, and she kind of wanted to be left alone, but, you know, I didn't want to leave the room. So I'm like just on my phone, and sure enough on Reddit, hey, there's the Mörk Borg Kickstarter for Icon is up, and I had not backed the Mörk Borg Kickstarter. Then I saw the book, and I'm like, oh my god, this is really, really good. Picked it up, and I keep going back and forth on, I will back everything that Free League does or sneezes on, and I have to stop backing these Free League Kickstarters. You know, what am I doing here? you know, like, am I really going to play Invincible? Like, I haven't read Invincible, so why would I back the Kickstarter for Invincible? But it's freely, so you know it's going to be just fantastic. And that Kickstarter just hit me in a moment of like, well, you know, here comes my son. Who knows if I'll ever back a Kickstarter ever again? And you know, 4 years later, surprise, I have. But even that Kickstarter was incredible. And again, just so much cool stuff. So Mörk Borg, again, I've read it. Pirate Borg. I was like, well, I'm like, you know, I like Mörk Borg, but do I really want a pirate version of it? I don't know. And then I see the book and I buy the book and I'm like, oh, this is incredible. What was I thinking? I should have backed that Kickstarter too. So when the most recent Pirate Borg Kickstarter kicked, I was like, well, I guess I'm all in on this too.
Yeah.
And my personal favorite is definitely Cyborg. I actually managed to play a session of it. I was hoping to run a campaign, but the first session went seriously south. The player characters were trying to break into a secure party, and like there's a party in this. I think this is the adventure in the core book. If either of you have read the Cyborg core book. They're trying to break into this apartment where a party is going on, and one of them is like, fudge it, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the cops come. And I'm like, oh God, they got caught between the cops on the outside and the party goers on the inside, and everybody died. And I was like, oh, this has gone poorly. And, you know, and it's fine if everyone dies and they're having a good time, but this was everyone died, and it felt dumb. And it's so easy when a session goes badly to be like, we're moving on to something else. Don't look back at that. We're just going to move on. And that is what happened with Cyborg, which I feel bad about because, again, I just have a fair amount of Cyborg stuff, and it's a great system. And it is the art and the simplicity. And you're right that the attitude does pull you in more than anything else. The lack of like you think about all of those White Wolf games. You're pretending to be a ghost, and they were all really, really good. There were a lot of good games there, but you probably couldn't play the ghost game where you're Slimer, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like if there was maybe there is a Borg game where you're playing a ghost, but I would imagine that there'd be an ability to play Slimer from Ghostbusters in that game.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think I did think you did the right thing by backing away and moving on to something else, because like it's hard to, like, when you've already crashed the plane, when the plane's already crashed, we won't say you crashed the plane, but when the plane's already crashed, it's too late to pull up, right? Like you go have a good experience someplace else and come back later, because it's worth revisiting, but it's hard to recover from a disappointing TPK. Is pretty rough, especially on session 1. But that's interesting. I think that Cyborg is probably the least, how do I say this in the best way? I think Cyborg is the most underserved of the big Borgs. Like, if you go to a show like Gen Con, we'll use Gen Con as an example, you're liable to see a lot of Pirate Borg, you'll see a lot of Mörk Borg on offer, you'll see RagnaBorg, you know, you'll see a collection, you'll see Vastgrim. But Cyborg, there might be like 2 games, right? And it's like, this is just as big. Arguably, I don't think you're alone, Ben, that like a lot of people think that Cyborg is their favorite of the Borgs. It's certainly a gorgeous book. It's one of the biggest books. But it doesn't get to the table at shows, especially, as often as the others. And I think that's a shame, because there's a lot to love in that space.
Yeah, I own it. I've never gotten to play it.
And you've ran like 6 Borgs a week. So.
Yeah, no. I would like to. Maybe one day. We just played Bloodborg, and I feel like that's the vampire game I've been waiting for.
What do you like about it?
Vampire the Masquerade, I felt like it punished me for being a vampire at times. It was like, oh, I'm feeding. Oh, the beast takes over, and now something negative is going to happen to your vampire. for being a vampire and feeding themselves. I
Mhm.
didn't quite understand that. And I don't know, maybe I just had a bad experience. I don't know. We played it earlier this year, but Bloodborg, you actually need to feed because you need to spend blood in order to use some of your like vampiric abilities. And I love the fact that you're dumpster diving, literally diving into dumpsters and finding random stuff. There's a class that's built all around that they use the stuff from dumpsters to make items. And this like gutter punk feel of it, like the 80s, like the Lost Boys, it really speaks to me just because I like all of that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, I tend to be more What We Do in the Shadows than Interview with a Vampire type of vampire person.
That makes sense. So for people listening at home, I guess Bloodborg is by World Champ Game Co. Adam Voss is the designer, and it looks amazing. I have it on my shelf. And it's pretty new. I think it came out last year about this time. So
I hate to interrupt because this is going so well, but I've been, I think I was in the shower in the past few weeks, and I'm like, where is the OSR for Vampire the Masquerade? So,
I mean,
I have to ask. So Erica, I feel like one of the strengths of Vampire the Masquerade was its prohibition on violence, thusly directing play into these non-traditional directions. Does Bloodborg have that, or is Bloodborg like, feed?
yeah, you feed.
Okay.
I mean, because you have to you have to use your blood in order to use, depending on what your ability is, right? It costs you blood. And so, but to me, I don't know. To me, it's like you're a vampire. You should feed. You should be violent because you're a vampire. Unless you want to sparkle in the sun, there's nothing wrong with Twilight. I love Twilight. I read the books. I went to the movies. Not hating on it, but that's not the vampire I want to be. It's not my vampire experience, right? It might be somebody else's, and that's fine. Whatever makes you happy, right?
Is there like a government of vampires running a city?
I don't not in Bloodborg. No, you still have to keep up the masquerade, right? But I felt like the idea of the masquerade and the suppression was bigger in Vampire the Masquerade. And it could have been just because I was running it for my friends. It was for me and a couple of us, our September babies, and we all loved vampires. So I ran Bloodborg, and we had a vampire party. And so I just let him go with it. I was just like, yeah, you can. Like, one dude jumped on the stage. He just started feeding on the lead singer's neck in the middle of a concert and just went with it.
You know, it's interesting. I love Vampire. I've played it, I don't know, a few campaigns of it, we'll call it that way. And I have a blast, but I think you're right. I don't think I've ever thought about Vampire in this way, but like, I definitely think about OSR games in this way. And we'll just say D&D adjacent games in this way, where I get frustrated when a game presents me with a character sheet and with a character experience that's very focused on combat, right? If you think about the D&D experience, it's all combat on the sheet. And then my irritation is when I see adventures or presentations of the game that are very much like, oh, you shouldn't, like, this is a social game, or this is all about role play, like, in a different way. I'm like, yeah, but you're asking players to sit down and build a character and think about what does a 5th level fighter look like, and think about all their abilities, and they're picking feats, and they're looking at weapons that do a D8 or a 2D4, and how it is, like, all of that rolling around. I'm saying, you've got them in a combat mentality, and then you're asking them to ignore everything on their sheet and everything that they've thought about with their character and just try to, like, play a social game. And I think that it's interesting. I think that Vampire has some of that flaw too, in that there's some really cool stuff about being a vampire that you're then asked to shut down.
Yeah.
Right? This is all your cool abilities, and this is what happens when, like, the hunger takes over, or this is what type of blood you like to feed on, or your chosen prey, or whatever. Like, all that's fun to think about, and you're concepting a character. And then there is a substantial part of a vampire experience that's like, yeah, now lock all that out, and you're gonna get, your humanity at least is gonna get punished. And often that can mean the story is gonna punish you for embracing these things that the game has told you are cool. Yeah, that's interesting. I had never thought about vampire in that way, but it definitely has that same mind vibe of like doing that, like, you know, giving you one thing, but then actually wanting you to do another.
Yeah, there's a video game that I played on I think it was PS4. It's Vampire, right? You're supposed to be able to play as vampire. You turn into bats and all the cool stuff, right? But it won't let you can't feed on anybody, right? It's like, oh, you can feed on maybe this one or two people. There's certain people you can feed on, but you couldn't just like run amok and just be violent. And it wanted you to lean more towards the humanity side of the vampire. And I was just like, well, don't tell me that I get a vampire game and then say, well, this is the type of vampire that you get to play. You don't get to choose the type of vampire you want to be. You're forcing me to be a more humane vampire, right?
That's like the other thing that's interesting about this is that if there's one complaint about Mörk Borg, right, that like I feel like has validity, it's that you're playing in an apocalypse, and especially in core Mörk Borg, you're playing in an apocalypse. You're making characters that are not nice people. No. There's no character path for nice in that game. But yet the question that keeps coming up is like, why would I be in a party? Why would I do a quest, right? Like, what sorts of things would I be willing to participate in if I knew that the end of the world, if I'm not a nice person and I know that the end of the world is right around the corner? Like, that's a hard sell. You know, you can kind of contrive these like Suicide Squad style scenarios where, you know, you're just cramming a bunch of people into forcing them to participate. But it is a valid question about why am I making this vile character and then not being, you know, a violence and pell-mell enthusiast, especially when I think that first Borg book is like, there is going to be an end of the world and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So I think some of the others learn from that. If you look at some of the later Borgs and they say, I mean, Baskrim's a good example of like, there is an apocalypse, there is the end of the world that's just over the horizon, but there is a way to stop it if you can figure it out. And that's maybe enough for a campaign, but I think it is hard. And I think that's one of the downsides of a Borg is that when you're playing an apocalypse and you're playing as sketchy individuals, having party cohesion is something that you really have to think a lot more about than what you might have to do in other games.
Yeah, I feel like that with Shadowdark sometimes too, because it's like you know there's monsters down there. They can see you. You can't see them. Why are you going in there? Right? Like, why would you even chance? I mean, realistically, if you know that if you are in a world that you know at every dark corner, there's a monster that could be lurking that can see you, but you can't see it. Why would you even chance going down there? I think you could ask that question with more than just Mörk Borg.
Yeah. And Shadowdark is hard in that way too. I think like at least in Shadowdark, there's this idea of, and I agree with you by and large, but I'd say in Shadowdark, there is this idea of like, you are in the light and you are contending as a group with the Shadowdark, with creatures of the darkness, with creatures of chaos. So there's at least there's still a good question of like, why are you going down there as a group even? But you know why you're going down there with the person next to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, Shadowdark I mean, it's a good crawler, but if you are looking for a reason to crawl, it doesn't necessarily give you that, and you kind of have to find your own way through it. It's not a heroic game like D&D, right? So you got to find a reason that's not, well, you guys are all playing heroes, so you should feel obligated to do this. That doesn't work in Borgs, and it doesn't work in Shadowdark. Yeah. That's a quick way of your players losing their buy-in interest, is to encourage them to do it because it's noble or just, or, you know, a good deed.
Are you guys familiar with Delta Green?
Yeah,
I've heard of it. I've never gotten to play it.
So it started as John Tynes's answer to why are my characters in Call of Cthulhu doing these things in Call of Cthulhu? Like, when reasonably after a while you're like, I'm going to die and go crazy. So why am I doing this? And the answer is, well, there's a vast governmental conspiracy that is interested in pushing back Ragnarok, shall we say, by a few weeks or months or days or whatever. And that is what we are doing here. We are hopefully postponing the apocalypse using the covert might of the American government. And that is why you are here and doing it. And it beautifully solved one of those problems for Call of Cthulhu. So again, maybe a design challenge is always a design opportunity. It seems like if you can find a problem in a game, it seems to present an opportunity for growth for someone else. And I think that this is a smooth segue to so Erica, why Ragnarok? Why Vikings? Why that whole milieu?
So like any other good adventure, it started in a tavern. So we were at the bar at GaryCon 2023. My friend Anthony, who owns Talon and Claw, said, "You know what? I want to go on an adventure where Thor drops his hammer and you go get it. Y'all write it. I'll pay for y'all to write it. We'll create the zine and we'll sell it at GameWorld." And so that's what we did. And when we started talking about it, I said it has to be a Borg because it makes sense. And if I'm going to run this thing at cons for X amount, I didn't know, question mark, but I knew I'd have to run it. I said, I want to pick a system that I actually want to run. And so, yeah, that's how it all began.
You also like, I mean, don't paint this as Anthony's fault, because you also
all Anthony's fault.
You like Norse mythology
and
yes. Vikings a lot yourself. It wasn't like Anthony was like, "Oh, I want this," and you're like, "Well, I have time."
Yeah, I mean, no, yes, I did before. I mean, I've, I had read like through the sagas, and whenever I went to Ren Fair, I would wear the Viking outfit, and Viking Weekend was my favorite weekend of Ren Fair. And, I enjoyed like the shows and the music, and that we have now, bands that are based around that culture. But I mean, that's how it became, right? Ragnarok, why we chose, why I fell into this. Right. And I'm so grateful I did, because I love it. And it gave me an excuse to buy more books about Norse mythology and learn more about their culture. And I have a deep appreciation for it.
Do you have any favorite tidbits from Norse mythology, history, or culture?
I really like the magical mead. I think that's fun. I think that's neat. I think the sacrifice Odin gave to get wisdom, right, from the runes. I like the story where Loki disguises himself. Just the chaos of Loki is always fun, right? Yeah.
Go, Zach, was that you? If it was, go ahead. Or Erica.
No, you go. Yeah.
I was also gonna say just like I grew up on the water. Like I still live on the water, and just there's a connection there with them and the water, and I've always kind of felt that, and I've always loved boats and stuff. And I mean, their culture centered around that, and so there's a lot of personal overlap for me as well.
For me, it was the Viking sagas, which when I bought them were presented as the sagas of the ice, and just the brutality. And if you've read any of the sagas, they have a kind of random quality. They, in the same way that real life does, and like the little details, like berserkers before they go into battle, they just start gnawing on their shields because they're just so eager to go and kill you that they just can't wait. So they're just gnawing on their shields madly to go and do that. Or in the saga that describes the Viking attempt to colonize North America. You know, at one point in the saga, a ton of Native Americans show up and they're just chasing the Vikings back. They're probably going to kill them before they get to their boats. Until, and I think we found a theme of this episode, this one woman who is pregnant turns around, takes off her shirt, grabs a sword, and starts slapping her pregnant belly. And the Native Americans are freaked out and run away. They're like, "Who are these people?" Where the women will do that when the men are running away. Let's get out of here. This is too disturbing. And they get back to their boats and they flee back to Greenland or Iceland or whatever. Again, I'm relating this from memory. This is the historian in me, as I'm like, oh yeah, this is a thing I read, and so my memory might not be perfect, and I'm going to tell you about that. But I have had a serious lust for a Viking game, so I'm certainly interested to check out RagnaBorg. Any chance? God, do you know Luke Gearing? He's a Mothership guy in England.
Yeah.
I know Mothership, but
So he was on recently, and he says it's a 3-volume game, but you know, kind of a OD&D retro clone with a massive hex map of Northern Europe during the Viking Age, and you essentially play thralls whose master suddenly dies, and so you're free on the coast of Europe with a boat and your player characters, and what do you do? And it is like a $50 Word doc, essentially, like almost no formatting. Like there's a map, and I want to say like he did it in Times New Roman or something like that, and he talked about it so passionately and so intently. And the gentleman who was also on that show with us, whose name I cannot recall now, even though he wrote The Shrike, he said it was the best thing he'd read in the OSR, and I'm like, that is high praise. The best thing in the OSR.
it is.
So the next time I have $50 lying around, I got to pick that up. But you know, it sounds like it's going to be a real investment. So,
Is there? I guess this is for either one of you. I haven't played a lot of Viking games. I was at Chaosium Con UK this summer, and I played their new Viking RPG. But are there like standouts for you in the past of like, this is a really interesting Viking game that did something that I enjoyed, or has it been by and large not a exciting space in the last 40 years?
I've never played a Viking game before besides my own. I'm just being 100% honest.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels. I have not played one. I remember GURPS Viking, but I didn't pick it up. It seemed somehow an unpromising space. You know, what's the story that you're going to tell with it? You go and burn down an Irish monastery. And again, that's why I'm so interested in Luke Gearing's piece and so interested in RagnaBorg, because it seems to make being a Viking playable.
Yeah, and it's something that, like with RagnaBorg, right? We were talking about the why, right? Your call to adventure, and some of the issues with Borg in general. One of the things that I had always heard was death is just meaningless in Mörk Borg, and they have a problem with that. And so in RagnaBorg, you have Call of the Valkyries. So since you're a Viking, you want to die in combat, right? To go to Valhalla. So it's a chart you roll on, and you have the option when you level up to or get better. You can not do any of your gain an extra class ability. You could just take a +1, and that would help with you getting to Valhalla. So in RagnaBorg, I didn't want it to just be like, oh, we're just going to raid and raid and raid. I wanted it to be something not where you're not really warring against other humans, you're warring against monsters, because I think that's more interesting. So, a lot of the governments have fallen, the sun and the moon are gone. Can't grow crops. So perfect time for vampires to come and rule, right? Because the sun is no longer their threat. So they can do what they want. And so it's, if you're looking for something that's like a historical, RagnaBorg's not really that. It's more fantastical, right? I can't put cannons on a long ship, but I can put runes on it that makes the dragon head shoot a big ball of fire. So it's not grounded, if that's kind of more what you want. I think Fate of the Norns is, I've heard people say it's great and it's more grounded. I've never got to play it. I own it. And I've talked with their creators many times. They're nice people, but this isn't like a very grounded Viking game.
There's room for all sorts of Viking games.
You can play as a polar bear if you want to.
Okay, now please tell me more about playing as a polar bear.
So in the Solstice collection, which takes you back, right, pre-Ragnarok, during the long night, the winter solstice, they believed if you were outside your home when Odin rode with the wild hunt, all the dead in the sky, that your soul would be taken and drug to Helheim. And so in RagnaBorg, you play as effigies, which are made either out of wood or stone. The seer creates them, breathes life into them with runes, gives you a purpose, or you can play as animals. So there's 6 different trusted beasts that are options. Like one's a reindeer, they get a rune, random one that they can use. You could be a red squirrel with an awesome knife. You could be like the polar bear or a brown bear. And, and there's also Ash. Like I had a whole table, from Pirate Borg, I brought in Ash. I had a table that kept feeding the polar bear Ash. And so it was just like this cocaine bear situation. It was amazing. And that's what inspired the art. If you look at the Kickstarter, the Ash page has a polar bear on it with an arm in its mouth. And it's because I don't know if I will ever see those people again. But when I think about Ash now, I think about that table that I ran at Origins. So they inspired the art for the Ash page.
I love that. I love that. In Pirate Borg, we have this, we have 6 core classes, and then we have a couple of bonus classes. And one of the bonus classes is you can play as a tall tale, or a sentient animal. And I always say, there's types of tables where that is embraced. And then there's types of tables where they don't want any of that.
Yeah.
And I think that is figuring out at a con when people sit down, what table are we going to be this time? Are we the people who love talking animals or sentient animals and monkeys with knives? Or are we the table that are if I see if I have a talking alligator in our crew, I'm out, right? I don't think either one of them are necessarily wrong, but it's definitely 2 types of people.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have even thought to introduce runic trusted beasts into a Viking setting, but now that you say it and you talk about it like that, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes just as much sense as it would in a Pirate Board game. But it's yeah.
I knew I wanted to do something.
Divisive.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to do something with the solstice, and I knew I wanted to do something with winter solstice. But how do you, and it was one of those things. It's like, well, they can't go outside, but if you don't have a soul, then it gives another reason for the beast to be there. Because I've played a chicken in Pirate Borg, and I tried to die. I was like, I want this to happen, because if you're familiar with what happens to when the chicken dies in Pirate Borg, you want it to happen. And I could not get that bird to die. I tried everything to die. So
what? So help me kind of capture this, because I'm not as familiar with your Solstice collection. So in regular RagnaBorg, the core book,
yeah.
you have trusted beasts that are kind of is it fair to say more like animal companions in the core game, but then you let them be as player characters in the zine that you're kind of adding to it?
If you want to just play as a polar bear, then that's fine. The stats are there. Choose to be the polar bear. I think it's one of those things that, once your game's out there and people are playing it, you do what you want with it. If you just want to be a red squirrel running around and stabbing people, that squirrel, I've seen people use it to take down a 2-headed boar. It's been the hero of several games at cons. Because you think about squirrels, like they're nimble, they can climb, they can, leap, and they're small, they can crawl into places, they're great for spying and stuff. And so, I don't know. I like the idea of, if you want to be Vikings and be Vikings, if you just want to run around this crazy world as a team of animals, go for it. So it's something for everybody.
Ben, can I take us in a different route at this point? Cool. Because I have a question that has been gnawing at me, and I don't know if I'm going to get a better time to ask it. So I don't know if you know this, Ben, but Erica probably does more play testing than anybody else I know. I don't know that RagnaBorg has probably been play tested, ran at conventions, beaten to death in a good way, more than any other Borg. I don't think there's an argument or a debate to be had there. So my question
you're gonna make me up my pledge.
Okay, fair enough. Good, perfect. That's what I wanted. No, I'm curious, Erica. Like, as someone who doesn't do probably on the opposite end of the spectrum in some ways, and the amount of play testing that I would do for most things, what do you feel like you get the most out of play testing RagnaBorg, or just if you write adventures for other things or whatnot, you place it, like, what do you get the most, and what's stuff that, like, you've heard people talk about, or you thought before you did all this that you thought was going to be a lot of value out of play testing, but really has become worthless, or it's not an important part of your approach anymore?
God, yeah, that's a lot. Okay. I guess sometimes you don't see like the holes, until you're at table, right? You think, oh, that's going to work out. And it's like, no, at table, it really doesn't work, whatever idea it is. And I think that's kind of what it is for me. Sometimes I don't know if it's like blindness or if it's just like lack of experience, but sometimes I think that's my biggest thing. But I mean, like, I haven't play tested it as much. How do I say this? I ran it at cons so much because I had to, right? It's not like I play tested it to death because it was like, I really just want to play test it. It's more of, I wanted people to know about it. I wanted people to play it. I wanted to see if, like, this crazy thing that we cooked up at GaryCon, like, does anyone even care? Like, is it fun? Is it not? And I think one of the things that it's a blessing over the years at cons is stepping away from a great table. And it's like, okay, like, when you have days that, why am I doing this? Well, this is, you have those moments of like self-doubt. I think about like the table I ran for the people that did Ash Bear or whatever. And I think that, like, you said this to me, and I think about it a lot, is every time you run a session of your game, you're breathing life into it. And so I have ran a lot of it. I ran 32 hours at Origins, but I had to, right? It's how I got to Origins. It's how people learned about it. I don't have other people to run it for me a lot. I have some people too, but it's more of a, like, this is the only way I could really get people to play it, right? Is if I'm the one that run it. I can't get my friends to go to 12 cons a year for me. They can only go to so many. And I do have friends that run it for me, and I'm grateful to them for that, because they spend their vacation to help me with my dream.
Now I feel bad about, like, trying to make it a mechanical question, and you're like, oh no, I have this really, like, heartfelt reason that has nothing to do with mechanics.
I mean, it's true. Yes, I do see things mechanically that are problems and issues, and I try to fix them the best I can. But I mean, that is the truth. Like, that's how I got to Origins, right? I had to run 32 hours for a badge and housing.
Well, can I shout out one thing here, which is, Wizards of the Coast in the main does almost no playtesting. And the bigger your company seems to be, the less playtesting it seems to do. And it is so necessary and tends to produce such excellent content that, again, if you're an up-and-comer, playtesting seems to be a huge competitive advantage. The fact that you're able to put time into a game like that. And when I think about 5th edition, they did a bunch of playtesting at that. They took a bunch of time with it, and it's one of the products that they did do that with. It's one of the reasons that, gosh, like, what is it, 10, 12 years ago now? Oh, gosh, it must be 12 years ago that Wizards of the Coast put out those 1st edition reprints, essentially, because it gave them runway to spend more time developing 5th edition. And 5th edition, great version of D&D. Thank God they did it. But then you ask about, like, Descent into Avernus, for example, and it's like, yeah, you talk to the people who worked on that, it's like almost no playtesting, you know, not even harmony across chapters, really. So as a non-game designer who talks to a lot of game designers, you know, it certainly seems like the way that you can almost embarrass the big boys.
I think so. I think, like, I mean, again, I'm definitely on the wrong end of the spectrum here, but I do think that it is, from my experience, it has been, I think what you said, Erica, is like it's always the blinds. You never know what you should be looking for when you're play testing something. It's never the thing you think it is.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious when I see like you running 32 hours at Origins or something like that. I'm like, what are you getting out of that? What do you like? The cool thing is, it sounds like a big thing that you're getting is energy, motivation, memories, fans, blah blah blah. Right? Like those are all like incredibly valuable. But then, you know, but definitely the game designer part of me is like, what is she getting out of those 32 hours? And not just 32 hours, but that's, you know, anywhere from, that's probably almost, it might be 60 people that you ran for at the show, different people. Like, what did you learn about your game? What did you learn about how people approach your game that you wouldn't have? What changes do you make that you would have never thought to make? And the answer might be less of that and more of the other, and that's great. But it's just like the game designer side of me always looks at what you don't do and says, what am I missing out on? I guess is the note there.
I can tell you this. I know, like, I was told gay violence was not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I've been told that many, many times. The gay violence is my crit chart, right? That's Mörk Borg, but I don't think any Borg, I could be wrong, but I don't think any other Borg has a crit chart in it besides RagnaBorg. And I was told that that's not very Borg, right? And I was like, well, you know what? Gay violence is fun. And that's, to me, like, you know, you get a crit and everybody screams yay violence and there's camaraderie and it's a battle cry and you get to add more violence to your attack and it's tongue in cheek. And I've had people be like, well, you know, but then I see it at cons. I see when people get yay violence and they scream it. When I walk around at cons, people yell yay violence at me. People
and just to be clear, that
like
chart is
it.
that chart is YAY violence, right?
Yeah, why? Yeah, like,
yay,
yeah.
yay, violence.
Is it my accent that's getting the? I know what you're thinking. No, it's not that. I've had people say that to me as well. Yeah.
This is an audio and visual medium. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
You know, I pronounce Wisconsin with a G instead of a C, so I'm not throwing shade at anyone.
No, you're fine. But I see it. I see how people enjoy it, right? Some people think it's stupid, and I'm like, well, I don't know. The overall perception comes back as like it's fun and it's funny and it brings joy. So why not?
That's so strange. I'm so shocked. Like, I love yay violence. I love crit charts. I mean, crit charts are one of my favorite things ever. I look for excuses to pack them in where they shouldn't be. But Borg seems like a place that they feel right at home. And, you know, like, I'm surprised when you said, I think I'm the only Borg that has them, I'm like, that can't be true. But I think you're right. I think it is true, at least of like the wider known ones that are, or the ones that are on my shelf, at least.
Right.
But like, yeah, it's like this is a game that where like being bombastic and doing crazy things, like spells or the spell adjacent things in Borgs are always above your wildest expectations. They're either incredible and reshape the combat, or they are detrimental to the point of maybe just wiping out your entire party. Like, like every spell is a crit to some extent in a Borg. So like to me, it's very fascinating to hear that. Like, I think there is a hesitancy. I've experienced it. And I think I've experienced it in probably a half dozen systems that I've written for, that people don't like. They think that like there's something precious about the mechanics of a game as they came out of to keep your theme, Ben, as they came out of the womb. Yeah. The
Thank God my wife doesn't listen.
but no, like this idea of like, you know, oh, if you're playing 5th edition, like you should be using the chase mechanics, as god awful as they are, or non-existent as they are. Maybe I agree. Like that's the way to do it. If you're adding chase mechanics, then you're somehow not approaching it from the spirit of the system. And while I agree that every system has its own thing that it's trying to do, and for better or for worse, you should try to figure out what that is. I think that it's very. You can find out what the theme is, or what the vibe, or what the intent, or what the heart is of a system. And one of the best things you can do as a designer, one of the greatest things, one of the funnest things, is to find something that complements the spirit of the game, but wasn't there previously, and feel like you found a missing piece to the puzzle that nobody knew was even missing.
Right, and because if you look at Mörk Borg, right, it doesn't say combat; it says violence, right?
Can I ask for a few examples from the Yay Violence chart?
Off the top of my head, feeling it, or feeling this. It's feeling this. It's a nod to Blink-182, right? So there's a lot of like nods in there. One of them is Mine Now, which is where if you take the person's weapon away from them, so maybe it's a bear, right? Because this actually happened, and you play Why Are You Hitting Yourself? Because if you're the youngest child and you're the smallest one, like I am, you had that done to you like when you're a kid, right? And you turn the bear's claws or bite against it and make it hit itself, right? One of them is Pop Pop Mother. Can I curse on this or no? I don't know.
Sure.
Pop Pop Motherfucker, right? You get 2 free attacks with your feet, right? I mean, they're all just like winks and nods and just silly things that I've seen a lot of crit charts. I agree. Like I love DCC for a reason, right? But I wanted it to be fun and funny and have a little bit of personality versus like you do an extra point of damage because but yeah.
Well, I can't believe we're already winding down. So, Erica, can I ask you to tell people what they get if they back the RagnaBorg Kickstarter?
Well, I mean, it depends on which tier you back. But
what tier do you want them to back?
I want. It seems greedy if I say the most expensive one. I mean, like, I would prefer if you back the very expensive one, just because that way I could make them. The funds would be nice. I've been going to shows for like 2 years, so it would be nice to make some money back. But just just the book. If you just get the hardcover book with the character sheet pad, it's $52. If you want the all-in feast where you get like the nice asphalt and you get the DM screen and the adventures and the violence patch that glows in the dark, and it does glow in the dark because I made sure I got a mock one. It's at my house, and the D2 coins, that's $2.10, and you get PDFs of all the books as well. And that does the collector's cover.
Very cool.
Let me pop in for just a second here, because I you should not undersell certain things, and I think like I love that you're trying not to. But I would say the thing that I like about this Kickstarter, and I back hundreds of Kickstarters. The thing that I like about Erica's offerings in this Kickstarter, and the reason I think that you should go with at least the $115 pledge, is that there's the core book, and then there's 3 zines. And a lot of times with zines, what you're getting is extra adventures. And my argument always, and I'm guilty of this too, is like, all right, but I don't know when I'm going to get to play RagnaBorg. I know I want RagnaBorg, but I don't know when I'm going to get to play it. So why do I need more adventures when there's already adventure or 2 in the book, right? I think Erica has done something cool with these zines that she put in this, in that one of them is the gauntlet. It's a completely different experience because it's a funnel. And it's a different approach to it. And I'm excited to see what a funnel for Borg is like. So like that, I'm on board for. The Solstice one approaches, again, from a different thing. It's like a prelude. That's interesting to me. Even if I don't run the Solstice collection, it's interesting for me as a GM to see like what's stuff that's going on before all the stuff from the core book. It's lore repackaged, and I always like that. And then the third one is the solo zine, which isn't just like rules for solo play, but it's like, I mean, Eric has explained it to me, but it's like you're a Jarl and you're managing your clan as a experience. It's a whole different. It's in the same space. It's in the same vibe, but it's a whole different approach to the game. And so I think it's worth grabbing at that $115 tier where you're getting all those, because you're getting very, very different experiences that allow you to approach the game from 3 completely new ways. I don't know. Hopefully that helped.
No, I mean, that's very valid, and I appreciate that. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Zach, what could people buy of yours that'll put royalties in your pocket or money more directly?
I don't care. Whatever. Let's see. Go buy Pirate Borg stuff. That's that's the day job, but it's also the thing that I love. So anything that you can grab a Pirate Borg, we still have the pre-order up, and it's really like you're getting a crazy good savings there. And then if you want to grab something that's specifically mine, we just finished up Raptor Ruckus, which is my like 1990s approach to Jurassic Park by way of Mörk Borg, with a lot more focus on stealth and chase scenes and maneuvering, and less about can you put enough bullets in a T-Rex to kill it, which the answer is no. So yeah,
I hear that there are plastic minis.
There's minis galore with it at this point.
They don't have feathers though.
They don't have feathers, so you know what? We're a
mean,
very staunch anti-science RPG.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually going to get to. Eric is going to play it. He's going to run it for me before we go to GameholeCon.
there you go. Yeah.
You guys going to Game Hole?
We are.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll keep an eye open for you in the halls there.
We have a panel.
Yeah, I'm coming out of the panel. Yeah.
I'll come and watch your panel. So because I should, remind people about my stuff as well. If you're go ahead, sorry.
No, I say please tell us about your stuff. That's great.
If you are unaware, I have a book called Slaying the Dragon: A Secret History of Dungeons and Dragons. It's good. You'll like it. If you like this podcast, go and buy the book. It's more of me. You'll love it. There is a Patreon for this podcast. It is a mere $3 a month. For that $3, you get extra episodes. You can get me. You can get a conversation between Ken Hite, designer of Trail of Cthulhu, and Call of Cthulhu creator Sandy Peterson. You can get Peter Adkison talking to the historian of Gen Con, Matt Shoemaker. You can get me and Dr. Scott Bruner interviewing second edition designer Zeb Cook in the Hugh Hefner suite at GaryCon. And you also will get Dr. Scott Bruner and I are reading the Dungeon Master's Guide aloud. Due to popular demand, we're going to try and do that twice a month now. All that. Oh, and I just posted like 50 pages on the creation of third edition. All that for $3 a month, and we're going to try and never go higher than that. We're looking. This is a volume business, So if you're listening to this, give us $3 a month. You get all of that. It's a great value. And Erica, Zach, this has been an amazing conversation. I can't believe it ended so quickly. I'd love to have both of you on again sometime, whether you're talking to yourself or other people, that's fine. But thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Ben.